Welcome to week 4 of Polyvagal Partnership. This week we're talking about the 4 neural pathways of healthy relationship. This is information from Amy Banks, who's a psychiatrist who's written several books about this topic. Now, her work applies to all kinds of relationships, except with children, not children, but the people that you spend the most time with. Now, in this case, we're going to be applying it strictly to couple relationships, but if you're interested, then I would definitely recommend her book called Wired for Love. Now, she's identified these 4 neural pathways. It's basically a tenet or element of a healthy relationship that corresponds with something that's happening in the brain. And it's an acronym, CARE. The first is calm, which we've talked about a lot. That's the safety one. The second is accepted or belonging. The third is resonant, which we've also talked a lot about, finding that resonance. And the E is energetic, and that is all about the dopamine. Now, the really cool thing about this work is that she goes through a process where you can determine which pathway in your relationship is weak, or multiple pathways. And she contends that you can work on it, that there are things that you can do to boost or benefit, strengthen each of these neural pathways, and thus you will strengthen the health of your relationship. So I find it very exciting and super interesting. I hope you will too. We'll go through each of the pathways one by one. The first is calm. So this is the realm of the smart vagus, the ventral vagal system, otherwise known as the social engagement system. So if you do not feel calm with your partner, if you do not feel safe, if you do not feel respected, if it does not feel safe to be in conflict with your partner, if you cannot trust your partner with your feelings, and if your partner cannot trust you with their feelings, then this pathway is going to need to be strengthened in your relationship. So essentially, do you feel safe? So that's something for you absolutely to be thinking about as I'm going through each of these pathways. Ooh, not really. And she has a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is never feeling this way, and 5 is almost always feeling this way. And so you could go through each of those statements or questions and give it a bit of a ranking. So that through each of these 4 pathways, you can determine what needs some attention. And it could be that your calm pathway is quite weak because you have poor vagal tone due to the childhood that you experienced, and it could be that your partner is weak and energetic, the E of the CARE pathway. And so you would each work on those things in order to improve the good feelings and in order for the brain to be supporting this relationship that you want to be in. Dr. Banks talks a lot about these exact things we've been talking about, that we need each other, that the separation theory or the separate self theory is now sort of garbage, and that we are not wired to be separate. We are not wired for isolation, and that isolation is dangerous for us. So this calm pathway is about improving that vagal tone. So if you don't feel safe in your relationship, you will need to do things to improve vagal tone. So we'll just go through the pathways first, and then we'll talk about ways to strengthen them. But it's important to know that isolation is dangerous. Okay? What's going to bring this sense of fundamental calm and safety to your relationship is when you are spending time together in social engagement. The second pathway is the A, accepted. So being accepted, feeling accepted in all the ways that you can act and feel, feeling like you belong. So what they've discovered is that there's this very small part of the brain called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. And it has a really special job. When we hurt ourselves, so when we stub our toe or fall down or we have chronic pain, one part of the brain will register the sensation of that pain, but the DACC registers the distress, registers the suffering of that pain. Isn't that interesting? Now, what they found is Social exclusion lights up this DACC the same way as if you physically hurt yourself. So it is physical distress, physical suffering when you are excluded from the group. Which makes sense, right? So important as mammals for us to be together because there's safety in numbers. And so if you're the odd one out and you aren't accepted and you don't belong, that is fundamentally distressing. So much so that in the brain there is no difference in this DACC between hurting yourself physically and being hurt emotionally. What we tend to think is that the answer to this suffering or distress of being excluded is to develop emotional independence, right? Well, I'm an adult. I shouldn't be this needy. I ought to be able to do this on my own. What am I thinking? I'm such an idiot. So what happens over time, if we have a lot of experiences like this, is that the DACC becomes overactive and that our bodies begin to link physical intimacy with suffering. And so then this fire alarm of, oh God, you're in distress, this is bad, get out of there, is happening in relationship, even in relationships that we want to be in. So the answer is not to be able to be independent. The answer is to find ways to strengthen this pathway and to make the DACC healthier and more subtle and understand that it is safe and that this relationship or that relationship, we can strengthen this particular pathway so that that DACC is not firing all the time in those different relationships. So some of the questions that you can ask about your relationship are, do I feel accepted? Do I feel a sense of belonging with my partner? Despite our differences, do we treat each other as equals? Even if we have different roles, do we value each other's role in the relationship? Can I count on this person in the time of emergency? Am I valued for who I am? Am I accepted? I'm sure it's easy to imagine what we do with the answers to these kinds of questions. We use them as reasons to leave the relationship. All the time that happens, right? So that's why this particular work is so fascinating, because if we are linking those kinds of feelings, like no, I don't feel valued, and no, I don't feel calm, and no, I can't count on her in our emergency, right? Those are things that we use to justify leaving. But if we can see them in the context of the somatic experience, if we can see it in the context of our nervous system, of our brain health, and then we can do specific activities, specific exercises to strengthen our ability to feel that way, then everything improves. I just find it really hopeful and exciting. The third pathway is R for the word resonant. Now, this is referring to our mirroring system. So mirror neurons, we now understand, are part of a system-wide mirroring ability. Okay, this is absolutely crucial. We cannot understand another person unless we perform an act of internal mimicry of what they are saying or doing or feeling. So we can't read faces, we can't understand emotions, we cannot feel and express empathy if we do not mirror another person. Yeah, it's very cool. So what they've done is experiments where if I put a pen in my mouth, if I hold a pen in my mouth and you talk to me, so my muscles in my mouth have to be clenched around this pen to hold it there, which means the muscles in my mouth cannot internally imitate your speech. And so when I have a pen in my mouth, I cannot comprehend what you're saying. It becomes very difficult for me to even understand you. What? Yeah. This mirroring system is happening all the time. It really is such an important basis for human connection. I understand you because of what I'm doing inside. All right. Now, what can happen, and what does happen very frequently, is that we have so much input in our modern lifestyle. We have so many things that are tragic and sad, events and people who are tragic and sad. And violence is everywhere, right? So it can become a very difficult feat to continue to feed this cycle. To continue to mirror other people becomes overwhelming. And so what we tend to do is stop feeding this cycle. We stop leaning into empathy, and we start to protect ourselves by not caring, by checking out. And so that will, of course, affect our relationship, because even if it's safe in this partnership that we have for us to mirror each other, not just safe, but vital for us to mirror each other so we can understand one another. Because I have stopped allowing myself to feel, I can't just turn it back on just for you, because this is a system that requires feeding for it to work well. So it's going to take a shift for us to center human interaction as absolutely the most important thing that we can do. Some of the questions you can ask yourself about your partnership with regard to or the resonant pathway are: do I feel that we get each other? Is my partner capable of understanding how I feel? Am I capable of understanding how my partner feels? Am I able to see that my feelings impact my partner? And am I able to gain more clarity about who I am when I'm with my partner? So you can answer those questions for yourself to see, how strong is this mirroring system in me? How much do I need to work on this in order to improve the quality of resonance in the relationship? The final pathway is E for energetic, and this is talking about dopamine. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and specifically the pathway that uses dopamine for relationships is called the mesolimbic pathway. So, here's what's supposed to happen. We're born with a brain that automatically links dopamine with relationship. And as we grow and we get feedback from our environment that relationships are not safe. So if we have an abusive parent, if we are in a home where independence is highly valued, even in a baby, like cry it out. You should be able to self-soothe. What happens is our brain understands now that relationship is not safe. Relationship means risk. So what we do over time is our brain begins this protective service where it disconnects dopamine from relationship. Because our brain doesn't want to reward something that's dangerous for us. So the more cues we get that relationship is dangerous, that other people aren't going to help us and support us, that we're on our own, then the brain does this active service. Okay, well, we can't reward relationship anymore. So it unhooks those two things and instead begins to look for some other way to release dopamine. What else can bring pleasure? And those are things like drugs and alcohol and gambling and television, screen time, pornography, food, all of these things that can become addictive for us because we're looking for something to replace relationship as the bringer of the feel-good hormone. The work in improving this energetic pathway is to relink dopamine to relationship. Now, some of the questions you can ask yourself about your partnership with regard to this pathway are: do I enjoy spending time with this person? Do I feel energy? Do I feel energized? Do I feel productive after spending time together? Is laughter part of our experience together? Or could it be that our enjoyment of one another is actually occurring only when there's something else happening? Yeah, we have fun and we laugh and there's lots of energy when we're at a party or when we're watching TV or when we've had a bottle of wine, right? Is there some other actual source of the dopamine that you are applying to your relationship? Let's talk about how to strengthen each pathway. So now you have a bit of an understanding of what each pathway is, what the core feeling is in each of these pathways, and then what aspect of brain activity is corresponding to each of these pathways. And you may have a pretty good handle on what is your weak point in the relationship, which of your pathways needs to be strengthened. So the calm pathway says, we are safe together. I feel safe with you. You feel safe with me. Some of the things that you can do to improve this pathway are the kinds of things we've been talking about. Strengthening vagal tone, spending more time in social engagement, being really aware of your ladder, of when you're going down, of what brings you down, being able to stop and say, oh, I know what's happening here. There's something happening. My neuroception has picked something up. I'm coming down my ladder. What can I do? Oh yeah, I can call a friend. Oh yeah, I can bounce a ball. I can feel my strength when I push myself against the wall, a little bit of a push up on the wall, and I feel my physical strength. I can reach out to someone who makes me feel safe. I can tap into and use my resources in order to come up the ladder. When you are recognizing that you are going into freeze, I feel it. I know what this is. I recognize this. This is when I retreat from the whole world. Well, instead of continuing to do that, you can starve that well-worn path on the ladder by doing some small physical activity. A little bit of a bounce on a yoga ball, a little bit of rebounding on a trampoline, squeezing a ball, putting a ball under your foot and rolling your foot over it on the floor. Aha, I'm moving a little. I'm not letting myself go down all the way into freeze. I'm moving a little. I'm keeping a bit of that energy going. Another thing is to make more eye contact. Have these authentic smile experiences more in your daily life, not just with your partner, but with everybody that you come into contact with, because you will be receiving those cues of safety back when you give them out. And that will help strengthen your sense of feeling calm. When you are strengthening your calm pathway, it's a very good idea to try and reduce your exposure to unsafe relationships. I know that can be difficult, especially if it is a parent or a coworker, but keep it in mind that the less time, while you're trying to build up this pathway, the less time you can spend in relationships that make you feel unsafe, the better. We want to just keep this relentless messaging of safety coming to that vagus nerve. A somatic practice that can help to strengthen the calm pathway is absolutely embracing squeeze, which maybe you are continuing to do if you enjoyed it, but that is a really great, remember, it's just so much safety, communication. I'm here and you're safe, right? Actually, it's like this. This over and over, up and up your body parts, right? Up the legs and up the arms. I'm here and you're safe. And then another is exploring balance. So I use balance a whole lot in my work, in movement for the nervous system and in my couples work as well. Balance is really fantastic because there really is no separation between physical balance and emotional balance. So if you two do some practices together where you're exploring giving your weight to your partner and your partner helping you balance. And you can play with it a bit. What does it feel like to give my partner all of my weight? What does it feel like to give a little bit? What does it feel like to be pushed back? What does it feel like to be held? And then when you're the one holding up, how does it feel to hold my partner? How does it feel to tune into my partner's strength and vulnerability at the same time? And you can explore balance a couple of ways just by leaning into each other side by side. or by having one of you sit on a yoga ball and find balance yourself first, and then the partner becomes introduced to the equation and you play around with it a bit. Same kind of thing on a balance board. One of you stands on a balance board, tries to find balance. Oh, 1 foot, can I do 1 foot? And then the partner is introduced. Oh, and then it's a little bit of a back and forth and a playfulness. And we're just communicating to the body, I'm here for you. I can help you. I can hold you. I'm here. Use me instead of the floor. And you're also going to like push me off balance and then catch me too, or spin me like that. Hold on to me, good. Hold on to it. Yeah, so I can feel it. Yeah, exactly. That's much better for me. When we boil down the accepted pathway, what's here is we accept each other. You accept me, I accept you. And one of the ways you can strengthen this pathway is by tuning into what it feels like to activate that DACC, that small spot in the brain that registers distress or suffering of pain. So you can think back when you're feeling good. You can spend some time thinking back to a time when you were excluded. And you can really bring awareness to what that felt like, what the suffering of that, what the distress of that felt like in your body. And you can use that as a cue going forward. So when you are with someone and you begin to feel that way, when that space in your brain begins to be activated, you can, through awareness, begin to train it. Oh no, this is okay. This relationship is safe. You can turn off now. You can also think back to a time when you excluded someone else, when you were in the group and pushed someone else away, communicated to someone else, you don't belong here, and how that felt in your body, so that you are understanding what your own acceptance cycle looks like. Right? You're bringing as much awareness and understanding to what's happening with this fire alarm in your own body. Now, there are several somatic practices that you can do to reinforce this pathway. One is an exercise called Mama Bear, Baby Bear. And I've used this a lot in circle practices and things like that. One of you is Mama Bear and the other is Baby Bear, and you take turns. So Mama Bear is going to physically hold like a baby bear, okay? And is going to ask a question. And Baby Bear is going to close his or her eyes and answer the question. But answer the question over and over and over. And every time, Mama Bear is going to say, thank you. So whatever your answer is, I am receiving it. I am not judging it. I am not trying to determine if it's okay or not. There is no reflection from me except for gratitude. So for example, Mama Bear can say, tell me what you love. Baby bear closes his or her eyes. I love the smell of grass in the springtime. And Mama Bear says, thank you. What do you love? I love the smell of my grandma's perfume. Thank you. What do you love? I love my new dress that I bought. Thank you. What do you love? I love the color red. Thank you. What do you love? I love you. Thank you. What do you love? And it goes on and on and on until Baby Bear has nothing left, can't think of anything else, and feels complete, and then it's over. So that's such a fantastic practice to reinforce that whatever you love or whatever you fear, right, if that's the question, or whatever you desire, if that's the question, I am here for. I am holding you and saying, thank you. Thank you for sharing who you are with me. I deeply accept you.
What do you remember?
I remember my uncle swinging me around by my arms when I was 6.
Thank you. What do you remember?
I remember the police officers across the street from my grandmother's house used to give us orange soda.
Thank you. What do you remember?
I remember that a boy liked my sister and gave her a ring that was too big, and so we put candle wax inside to make it smaller.
What do you remember?
I remember sleeping outside in Paris with the kids and blankets, stuffed animals. Another somatic practice to strengthen this pathway is some kind of visual act that the two of you can create together with your bodies. So something where you are making or creating a visual communication that you belong together. So for example, kinetic drawing. You can do that with chalk on a chalkboard or chalk on the asphalt, where you can lie down and stretch your arms and use the chalk and make shapes, right? Or this way and this way and this way. Or just up here, making these repetitive marks with your body, with the chalk. And then your partner also does it next to you, and then you switch. You have 2 different colors of chalk, and then you switch. And then you make marks on the other person's kinetic drawing. Okay, and then you can stand up and see, wow, the blue and the red here, and the blue and the red here, and ooh, we've created something visual that makes the statement that we fit, that we belong, that we are accepted together. And a third is communicating loving kindness through touch. So this is sort of a different kind of tactile experience than embracing squeeze, but one person lies down and the other one will go from top to bottom or bottom to top and take time touching your feet. And I'm touching your feet and paying attention to your feet. And then up your leg, and I'm paying attention and touching you and all your whole body, your whole experience of who you are with loving kindness. I am bringing this deep respect and value and love and acceptance to your whole body. The resonant pathway says, I get you, you get me, we get each other, we understand each other. So when we are coming to a relationship with a mirroring system that has not been properly fed, that is not at optimal operation, it becomes this vicious cycle. So if I'm not seen in my, let's say, anger or sadness, then I have a really hard time seeing it in myself. And if I can't see the anger and sadness in myself, I have a really hard time seeing it in someone else. So if both of you are low in the mirroring system, you're going to want to really focus on this one. This is how you understand each other. It will be very good for you to strengthen your own mirroring system by spending time in those relationships where you do feel resonant. So if you have a best friend or a family member who really makes you feel seen, who really gets you, and you really get them, and you feel that, you have this predictive, finish each other's sentences, you like to do the same things, you really feel like you have this flow together, spend time in those relationships so that you can strengthen your own mirroring system and bring that back to your partnership. Like I talked about earlier, when we have this flood of negativity or of toxicity, then we can tend to shut off our mirroring system because it becomes too overwhelming to express and feel empathy for everything around us. So one thing that you can really do to help yourself is reduce your own exposure to violent imagery. And if that's the newspaper, unfortunately, reduce your exposure to the newspaper. But, you know, these sort of entertainment based violent imagery like movies and video games, if you struggle with your mirroring system, stop doing that for a while. Okay? So that you can begin to relax back into being able to feed this system. Some somatic practices that you can use to strengthen this resonant pathway. Some of the things we've already done, like the bouncing of the balls. You know how we had to sync up our systems in order to do that? We actually have to mirror each other. We have to have the same kind of flow in order to get that to bounce. Or if we got to catch. So that's very excellent because it's bringing in these other dimensions of the rhythm, hearing it, the visual scanning, and the playfulness. So we're actually introducing other aspects of these pathways. So for sure, the calm pathway as well. But that's a really great way, this ball work that we've done, to lean into resonance. Same thing with the mirroring of the movements, right? We are tuning into each other to see if we can line it up. Another is to actually just practice figuring out what the other person is feeling. So if you can kind of play a charades type game where I'm going to embody a particular feeling and then you have to guess what it is. So again, we're bringing some playfulness and some levity to this process, but it's actually improving that system, even though it seems forced or dumb. If I'm going to embody an emotion and then you practice figuring out what it is. So you're practicing all the skills of the mirroring system by doing that. Now, another is I walk across a room and then my partner copies my gait, copies my walk, or copies my posture when I'm sitting. Or I dance, put on music and I dance, and my partner copies what I'm doing. So not necessarily mirroring, because I'm not going to be looking. I'm just going to be in my own dance, in my own groove, and then my partner is going to watch me and do it too. So we're trying to get each other by copying each other. And there's so much somatic information that you gain from this kind of exercise. Oh, I didn't realize your shoulders were so stiff, right? Or you really hold in your stomach when you walk, or you really slouch over when you sit. I really feel collapsed, and I don't feel very supported. I feel really unsafe when I sit like you do. Do you feel unsafe like that? So that you are practicing getting into each other's emotions and bodies. And finally, you can use vocalization or toning. So if I can tone, I know this might be out of your comfort zone, and I'm sorry if it is. I can tone any kind of pitch on any kind of vowel, let's say, and then my partner matches it. And then I change pitch, and my partner matches it. And then my partner changes pitch, and then I match it, right? So we're practicing bringing the sense of who we are out of our voice. This voice is a mirror or a metaphor of our identity. So if I'm bringing my identity and then he's matching it, right? And then he's bringing his and I'm matching it. So we are reinforcing that there is pleasure and safety in resonance, literal resonance with tones. And finally, the energetic pathway is where we feel pleasure together. That's the foundation. I feel pleasure when I am with you, and you feel pleasure when you're with me. We feel pleasure together. If this is one of the ones you need to work on, it's important to identify what your dopamine pathway is hooked to. What gives you pleasure? When you are feeling down, what do you turn to? What is it that you may or may not be addicted to? Right? What's that dopamine hit that you go for? So identifying that will just, again, help bring some awareness so that when you turn to that hit, you can instead turn to someone else. Dr. Banks talks a lot about starving neural pathways, and that because there is the ability for the brain to change, neuroplasticity, there's another element which is competitive neuroplasticity, which means that there's only so much space in the brain. So it's not so much that you need to think about blocking off, like if it's chocolate, I'm not gonna eat chocolate anymore. I know that my dopamine hit is through chocolate, I'm gonna stop and break that habit. Instead, you can think about creating the new habit instead. So I need my dopamine hooked to healthy relationships. I need to have that happen. And so when I feel like going for the chocolate or buying the chocolate or searching the cabinets for the chocolate, I am going to specifically seek out another person, a relationship instead. So it's not so much stopping that behavior, but it's starving the neural pathway. Because once I start to do this, more neurons are recruited over here to make this the pathway that now takes up that space in the brain, and this one withers away. You may have thoughts and beliefs that say that you should feel better on your own. So those are also neural pathways that you can starve. When you start to feel like I shouldn't rely on other people, it's silly to want someone else or to need someone else. I had a bad day at work, I should be able to just handle it. I should be able to unwind and relax and take care of my own stuff. So if the same thing happens, like you can immediately turn to another person with intention. No, that's not true. I know that's biologically false. That goes against my physiology. And so I'm actively trying to hook my dopamine with relationships. And so when I start to think those patterns, when those beliefs start to become activated in me, and I start to turn away from people when I'm not feeling good, I will actively start a new pathway that says, no, I need people. I feel better. I'm going to center relationship in my life. Some somatic practices for strengthening this dopamine connection or the energetic pathway are massage. So we want to feel pleasure together, right? So it's not embracing squeeze and it's not loving kindness touch, but it's just massage. It's just for pleasure. Ooh, where's it tense? Your shoulders? Ooh, you want me to do your head? What do you like? Massage. Another is laughter. I recommend setting a timer. 4 minutes is what I usually do with my clients. But you can work your way up to 4 minutes since you won't have somebody there forcing you to do it. You can start with 2 minutes. Set your timer for 2 minutes and just laugh together. That's all the endorphins, all of your pleasure center opening up. It's fun and playful and energetic. There is pleasure in being together. So you are reinforcing pleasure and your relationship. And I would recommend doing this a lot. Set your timer and laugh. And the trick with laughing is that you fake it till you make it. So even if you're faking it for 2 minutes, it still gives you all the same results as if you were actually doing it. But really, when you fake it, it gets easier and it turns into something real. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go. I think they got it. And the third is something called original play, or it's sort of my take on original play. Original play is a concept developed by Fred Donaldson where he uses it with children specifically. And he taps into this mammalian aspect of us that wants to wrestle and play and use our bodies like puppies would to find pleasure and to, express emotion and express frustration and get all these things out of us, right, through movement that other mammals naturally do. So he trains people all over the world, and they go into especially communities that have issues around violence and play with these kids. So it's designed to decouple violence and aggression from movement and activation. Does that make sense? But in this context, we're going to be using it to bring pleasure, this sort of childlike and also animalistic approach to movement, where we have a lot of adrenaline and activation, right? We're in this cross state of being safe and social engagement and also being activated, because you got to be activated to play. And kids do this naturally all the time, and puppies too. So yeah, I recommend trying it. The rules are that no one gets hurt, you protect each other from getting hurt, and there's no tickling. This is just playful wrestling, we'll call it. Easy, playful wrestling. And the couples I work with in person have a great time with this, and you get better at it. So don't quit if it feels awkward or weird at the beginning. You'll need a safe place. If you have a mat or something on the floor, you could do it like that. Or if you put a mattress on the floor, or if you have a big enough bed, you can do it in your bed as well. But what we're doing, again, is strengthening this pathway by bringing pleasure and fun and energy to the relationship. homework is going to be figuring out, for each of you, which pathway or pathways need to be strengthened. Okay, where did you score the lowest on these kinds of questions for each pathway? And then I would like you to pick a few of these somatic practices to do this week together that correspond to the pathway that needs to be strengthened. Okay. Have fun with it, stay open with it, stay really playful and curious. We want to stay in that place where there's a lot of safety being communicated. We're in this together, we got this, but also opening up to what could be here and what could we learn from this and how does this feel and what could that mean for the rest of our relationship, right? So stay in that space where, yeah, let's try it. And if we hate it, we never have to do it again. All right, good luck.